Hello and welcome to the new TACTICA video guide. The purpose of this video is not only to introduce you to Tabletopia, which is the free-to-play 3D environment where TACTICA is played online, but also to teach you the basics of the game, so you'd be able to play it yourself. This video guide is divided into 8 chapters, each of them covering different elements of the game. The first chapter will be about Tabletopia.com, or simply Tabletopia, the game server where TACTICA resides. You'll learn how to access the server, how to log in, how to set up a game, invite players, and how to orientate in the 3D environment. The second chapter will introduce you to all game components and maps. You'll learn about all the unit tokens, their specific characteristics, the action cards, counters, dice, but most importantly the map and all its specific zones. Third part is all about starting the game, how to recruit units and play out your first turn. The topic of the fourth chapter is combat. You'll come to understand the rules behind it and see how to initiate it and resolve it. Next, we'll take a look on how to capture objectives, that is the temple and ports. In a sixth chapter, you'll learn how to capture a castle, which is what you need to do in order to win. The second to last part will touch on the end of your turn and the earnings you'll get in that stage. In particular, we'll be looking at how to count up all the gold and other resources. And lastly, we'll take a look on how to utilize your war wagons and action cards. The last chapter will also provide you with some strategic and tactical recommendations. The first thing you need to do if you want to play TACTICA online is to access Tabletopia. The easiest way to do it is just to type tabletopia.com/games/tactica. Or you can Google it, of course. The opening page of TACTICA on the Tabletopia server looks exactly like this. You can find all basic information there or access the rulebook. Most importantly though, you can select whether you want to play Hot Seat, which is like a local game, or if you want to play online. By clicking on Play Online, you will create your private game room. In there, you can change game modes between the base vanilla version and Empires, which is the expansion. As a room owner, you are also able to invite people by sending them the link, add or change seats, and once everyone's ready, start the game. And now, let's take a look at the game itself. After a while of loading, you'll find yourself gazing at the entirety of TACTICA at your hand. At least at the entirety of what is TACTICA at the moment. Because the game is still in the beta development phase, and so you'll notice a few changes from time to time. That means this guide will get eventually outdated, and so it is heavily recommended to check patch notes and the newest rules. First, let us take a look on these helper cards located on the side. In the first column, you'll see the name of the unit and a picture representing an in-game token of that unit. Next, you'll see the particular unit's attack and defense stats divided by a slash. In a third column, you can check out the unit's cost, followed by its movement points in the fourth one. All basic units are listed there, including the action card, which is of course not a unit. You can draw action cards from the deck, located here. Drawing an action card is like manipulating a 3D object, meaning just click on it and drag it towards the bottom of your screen. And then, if you want to play it from your hand, simply drag it and drop it on the battlefield. Once your card is resolved, put it on top of the discard pile, which is located next to the deck. Next, let's take a look at the brown chubby bag and what it contains. If you click on the bag and then drag, the bag will give you a little flame token, which has its uses, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. By the way, you can access the full rulebook while in the game by clicking on the paper icon located in the bottom left. It is important not to get scared by the Czech gibberish and remember to scroll down for the English version. Okay, Now it's time to take a look at the game tokens of units we'll be playing with. But beforehand, we have a die here. At the start of the game, all players roll their dice to determine the turn order. The only remotely complicated unit is the archer, which takes form of the D4 die. That is because you can recruit archers of different tiers, which is reflected by these numbers. You can access a control menu of all the objects here by a right click. The rest of the units are just simple tokens, movable by a left click. You should get familiar with them pretty quickly, and if not, just use the helper tile. Last but not least, there's the flag, which you can use to designate which castles you own. Next to every castle is a counter that every player uses to track their current gold amount. The easiest way to control it is by using your mouse wheel. Up next, the map. Every map is divided into hexagonal fields. Moving from one field to another will cost your unit 1 movement point. But not all fields on the map are equal to each other. As you can see, there are different zones on the map, and so let's take a look at them. Starting with a citadel, a field where you place your flag. This is unfortunately the only use of the citadel, as no unit can enter this field. Around the citadel are lower castle fields. In these fields, players can recruit their units, but be aware, as units standing on these fields will not grant you any income. Naturally, you can only recruit your units in the castles you own. But you can also recruit your units elsewhere. These dirt brown fields are called the port grounds. Port grounds are always located next to the port center, which is an objective that we'll talk about later. To sum up the list of field types that do not grant you any income, here's the desert. You can recognize the desert by its yellow sands. Unfortunately for your units, these are not your everyday sands. These are quicksands. Whenever a unit is entering a desert field from a different field type, it gets trapped, as the quicksand deprives it of all its remaining movement points. And finally, there are the mountains. Climbing up and down a mountain in a full gear is pretty tiring for your units, and so it requires spending twice as many movement points. That means entering or leaving a mountain field costs 2 movement points. But on the plus side, if any unit completes the climb, it is rewarded by fresh air and beautiful scenery, which strengthens its resolve, granting it a bonus counter. And these are the tiny flame tokens you can get from the chubby bag. The bonus flame token is consumed in that unit's next combat, granting it a bonus of +1 to both its attack and defense. And finally, the objectives. Let's start with a temple, which is also a desert field, but a bit of a special one. Owning a temple grants you a splendid reward, but we'll get back to that in the quote-unquote end of your turn chapter. And at last, we have the port center. Whoever controls the port center controls the whole port. But it's not for free, as whenever you want to capture an unoccupied port center, you have to pay the fee of 2 gold. It might be worth it to do it though, as every port center you own adds to the total number of units you can recruit in the port grounds of ports you own, as well as to the overall discount you can apply on them. As we already mentioned, the game starts by all players rolling their dice to determine the turn order. The one with the highest roll proceeds by picking a castle and units of matching color. At the start of the game, every player has 25 gold that he can spend freely for various units or an action card. It is of utmost importance to buy the units that match your starting strategy. And not only that, if you see your opponent has already recruited a particular army, it is good to adapt, both in terms of your strategy and your army composition. Tactica rewards assertiveness and aggressiveness. If you want to capture an objective, which is heavily recommended, either get faster units that can get there before your opponent's units can, or ones that can fight them off once they arrive. Having a plan and reacting properly are both equally important. For our mock recruitment, let's recruit some light infantry, which is pretty universal and pretty cheap, then a light cavalry, the fastest unit in the game that can conquer a port center straight away, and finally some peasants. Because although they are pretty useless in combat, they are really cheap, and so they will earn us their value back extremely quickly. Alright, that's it. Now let's add up all their costs together. By the way, if you do not remember them, just take a look at the helper tile again and subtract the total amount from our transparent gold account, like this. As you can see, we still have 7 gold remaining. Although we could end our turn now and just save it up for later, it is not the best thing to do. Generally, it is recommended to spend as much as you can, since it is sort of an investment. The sooner you recruit a unit, the more it will be able to earn and accomplish. So, to top everything up, let's get a tier 2 archer. Archers are purchased for multiples of 3 gold. That means our tier 2 archer having attack and range of 2 will cost us 6 gold. A unit can enter combat only once per turn. When it does, it automatically loses all its remaining movement points. Only 1 versus 1 combat between mutually hostile units can be initiated. It is necessary to distinguish between attacking and defending unit. There are 2 types of combat in Tactica: melee and ranged. Melee combat is a situation where a unit wants to step on a field occupied by an enemy unit. In that case, both units deal damage to each other equal to their attack, which is then subtracted from their defense. Attack, defense, and other characteristics of fighting units can be altered by playing action cards. A unit whose defense drops below 1 is destroyed. Surviving unit then remains standing on the field the combat took place on. All units which survive the combat are immediately healed to their full defense points, right after the combat is resolved. Ranged combat is then initiated by a unit that can attack at range. In the base vanilla version, these are only archers. Whenever a ranged unit attacks, it loses all its remaining movement points, like in the case of a melee combat. If the archer attacks a unit that cannot attack at range, he will receive no return damage. However, if the attack unit is also ranged, it can shoot back, provided it has enough range to do that. To get all benefits the objectives provide, you have to control them via your units. To own the temple, you have to have a unit on the temple field and at least 1 additional unit standing on a desert field. Taking control of a port is easier. You only need a unit on the port center, but remember the 2 gold fee you have to pay if you are entering an unoccupied one. In case you are taking control of the port as a result of defeating an enemy unit who was standing there, you are taking it by force and thereby don't have to pay anything. And now, let's go conquer some castles. A conquest of a castle is triggered whenever an attacking player has at least 3 units inside and simultaneously more units than the owner or defending player has. If there is a 3-on-3 standout, there is no trigger. A conquest can be triggered even outside of the attacking player's turn, if the defending player breaks the standout or by using particular action cards. Action cards can be used in defense as well though, to stop the conquest from resolving. Once a castle changes its owner for the first time, it is sacked, granting the conqueror a reward of 12 gold and 2 action cards. A successful conqueror becomes the new owner of that castle and places their flipped flag on its citadel to mark that it has been already sacked. Conquering a sacked castle grants no special rewards. From now on, the newly acquired castle grants its new owner income and passive bonuses, but it can also be used for recruiting new units straight away. The units who participated in triggered conquest, successful or not, lose their remaining movement points for this turn. Once your last castle is conquered by an enemy, you are eliminated from the game, provided you are not playing in the casual mode. At the end of their turn, each player needs to count up their earnings from units and objectives. Using this mock situation of a red player deployment, we can learn how this works in practice. Starting with objectives, red player owns 2 ports. Each one of them will grant him a base value of 3 gold, plus 1 gold for every port he owns. So for 1 port, that would only be 4 gold. But for the 2 he owns now, it adds up to 10 gold in total. Next would be the temple, but as you can see, red player doesn't control it at the moment. In a hypothetical situation where he would own it though, he would get a reward of 8 gold and draw 1 action card for free. Controlling a temple also lets you do cool stuff when drawing an action card, as you can look at the top card and either draw it or put it to the bottom of the deck. You can do this neat trick once per turn for every castle you own. Okay, back to reality. Next, we have to check how many castles the red player owns, as each of them will grant him 2 gold. And finally, we count up the number of units that stand on ordinary fields or on mountains. Each one of them will earn us 2 gold as well. Remember that units standing on a desert, lower castle or port ground fields do not earn you anything. And lastly, let's look at war wagons and action cards. A war wagon is a vehicle your infantry units can utilize to become stronger and faster than on foot. It grants the unit driving it a bonus of +1 to its attack and defense, as well as a bonus of +2 to its movement points. An infantry unit can board the wagon from a neighboring field without spending any movement points. Additionally, the driver unit can disembark from the wagon at a cost of 1 native movement point, allowing other units to use the same wagon and its bonuses in the same turn. It also gives the driver some sort of protection. Should the driver receive damage equal or up to 1 greater than its combined defense while in combat, only the wagon is destroyed and the driver is safe. However, if the damage received is greater by 2 or more, the driver dies as well. And what about action cards, I hear you say? When you buy or get an action card, put it in your hand, so other players would not know which one you have. From now on, you can use it anytime. Literally. Like in reaction to an enemy making a move, playing one of their action cards, or any other situation that occurs. Action cards marked by a green gem can only target friendly units. Those marked by a blue one can target any unit. In your turn, you can purchase 1 action card for every castle you own. The maximum number of cards you are allowed to hold in your hand is 5. And that's it. By now, you should have an idea about what Tactica is about and how to play it. Honestly though, as is the case with most strategy games, this simple video guide cannot make you a professional player. To become one, you'll have to experience everything by yourself, to find answers on deeper questions, such as what opening builds are good on what maps, which strategies do work best for you, how the different types of units fare against one another, when to buy action cards, when to invest in units, when to be aggressive, when to stay back, when to form alliances, when to backstab people, and so on. After watching this video guide, it is therefore recommended not only to read the rulebook, but to get real game practice, be it with your friends or by joining a public playtest, where experienced players will gladly teach you. On top of that, you can also learn by watching a professional cast league match, where the best of the best compete for prizes. Maybe once you'll be able to join them. The latest version of the game is always found here at Tabletopia. The Tactica community then resides at the Tactica PBE Discord server, so please join us there using a QR code or a link in the description. Besides that, you can check the official Facebook page of the game, Twitch channel where we stream the league matches with fun and analytical commentary, or the YouTube channel, since you're already here, right? All the information you need is available at the brand new Tactica website. There, you can see where to play the tabletop version of Tactica, take a look at the latest updates in the patch notes, read the rulebook and much more. Thanks for your interest in Tactica, and all the more so if you actually managed to watch the whole video. I will be more than happy to meet you online during a public playtest or in person in one of the venues Tactica will be venturing to. Tactica is currently still in development, and progress is possible only thanks to you, people who play it, or at least are thinking about playing it. That being said, so long and keep playing.